You spoke to Mr. O'Brien about arranging some meetings, but you did not do the negotiating.
I did not, no.
And that was Mr. DeCicco that did the negotiating regarding the settlement of the lawsuit.
Correct.
So that from the OMERS or Oxford perspective throughout, they would, if they concluded that you were in fact the broker on the deal, that would have been consistent with your view of your role on the deal at that point in time.
Correct.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Yes.
I wonder if we could break now, because that will allow Ms. Rothstein to consult with the person she needs to consult with.
You need some time to speak to someone. Sure. Why don't we break now and come back at 2 o'clock?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Order, all rise, please. Parties reconvene, please be seated.
Afternoon, Commissioner.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. McCallion. I'm Linda Rothstein. We met this morning.
Yes.
As I think you know, I act for World Class Developments and Mr. DeCicco. And I think you know that my firm is Pallier Rowland. I know it's hard to say. I think that you met two of my colleagues last summer, Miss Margaret Waddell and Mr. Jean-Claude Keeley. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And indeed, am I correct that you met them when you first discussed WCD's litigation with OMERS at Mr. Bichelia's office last August? Is that
Yes.
right? Do you know the date of that meeting, Mr. McCallion?
I do now, but I didn't remember it. I believe it's August the 6th.
Right. And am I right as well that my colleagues, Ms. Waddell and Mr. Keeley, were in attendance at that meeting with you, Mr.
Yes.
DeCicco and Ms. Bichelia?
Yes.
And as between Mr. Bichelia and my firm, I take it you don't really know who had the greater role in the preparation of your affidavit or any of the affidavit materials that were filed on behalf of WCD. Is that fair?
That is fair.
All right. So when you say that you believe that Mr. Bichelia prepared it, is that really more in the way of an assumption than actually?
I had no knowledge.
Okay. Now, dealing with the events that followed your swearing of your affidavit on August 24th, 2009, because we know that's the date that it was ultimately sworn, you've told your counsel, Mr. Gover, that sometime after that, it was brought to your attention by your mother that the word principal had been used to describe your role in WCD. You told us about that this morning.
Yes.
Okay. And as a result of that conversation, you saw fit to make a change to your affidavit, right?
Correct.
And in order to do that, you attended at Mr. Bichelia's office.
Correct.
And am I correct, sir, that you attended at Mr. Bichelia's office on September the 11th of 2009?
Yes.
All right. Am I correct, sir, that Mr. Bichelia himself was not in the office? He was downtown doing an examination for discovery?
Yes.
All right. And so you spoke to his staff, a member or two of his staff?
I spoke to Emilio.
All right. You first spoke to Emilio.
And then he said, go to the office and they will prepare it for you.
Okay. So, but he didn't know at the time what you were contemplating doing. He simply knew that you wanted to make a change. Am I correct about that?
I believe I explained it to him.
I anticipate, sir, that Mr. Bichelia will be filing an affidavit in these proceedings, and if his evidence is that he didn't, in fact, know what you were contemplating, but he said, go speak to my staff, and if they can assist you, by all means. Does that accord with your recollection?
Not completely.
All right. In any event, you went to his office, you instructed his staff to make a change to the affidavit by deleting the word principal and saying that that should be deleted from your affidavit. Is that right?
It was deleted, yes.
And then, am I correct that in the end result, after having instructed his staff to do that, his staff told you that they would not commission your affidavit?
I didn't ask the staff to. I assumed Amelia was not there, so I had to find someone else.
So you don't know anything about whether Mr. Bisceglia, in fact, instructed his staff not to commission your proposed affidavit?
No, I do not know that.
Right. And you then took the affidavit and you didn't expect it to be commissioned in Mr. Bisceglia's office?
Correct.
Right. And then you told your counsel that you then went to another lawyer's office and had it commissioned?
Correct.
All right. I think those are all my questions for you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, Mr. McCallion, as you know, I'm Will McDowell. I'm Commission Counsel.
Yes.
We've now met a number of times.
Yes, quite a few.
It's the nature of these things, I guess. I took from your evidence that you're in very close contact with your mother, the mayor.
Quite often, until the inquiry, of course.
So if you go back to 2007, 2008, 2009, at that point you were driving her to various functions?
Yes.
You accompanied her at functions?
In some of them, yes. Not all.
And you do various things around the house for her, cleaning the pond?
Yes.
And cleaning the pool, I take it?
Sometimes. The pond takes more work.
Right. But you're in touch with her. You were in touch with her daily, I take it?
Daily, almost, yes.
And you're still in touch with her a lot now, I hope?
Oh, a lot, yeah.
Yeah. But back then you were in touch every day with her?
Nearly.
And recapitulating your evidence from this morning, as I made a note of it, it's your evidence that, as far as you know, you did not realize that she did not realize that you were anything but a real estate agent in this deal.
Correct.
Until relatively recently.
Until relatively recently.
And just we'll go back over this, but again, taking your evidence from this morning, your evidence is that today you understand that you are a principal of WCD.
Correct.
That in fact you're the beneficial owner of shares of WCD.
Yes.
But that you didn't realize that through 2007 and 2008.
That is right.
Right. And that was the case, notwithstanding that you had invested $30,000 plus $73,000 plus $50,000 in the company.
Correct.
So $153,500.
I didn't invest it, I loaned it.
You loaned it, fair enough. You had signed a promissory note wherein you represented that you had authority as a signing officer.
Correct.
Right. You had received living expenses from the company.
Well, from the money I put in, I wanted some of it out to pay for living expenses.
Right. You put money in, you got money out of the company. Last week, I believe we showed you a document which appears to indicate that your colleagues at WCD were in fact marketing the company on the basis that you were a part owner.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that at the time, but it appears that that's what they were doing.
It appears that way, yes.
Right. And, sir, I believe that Mr. Cook will come here and say that he thought that you were his partner.
I can't answer that.
Similarly, Mr. Coupry, you don't...
Mr. Coupry was his partner, in my opinion, at the time.
Right. And as we now know, you were in an ownership position of the company, as was Mr. Coupry at a period of time.
Yes.
Now, if we could turn up Exhibit 212, which is your August 24th affidavit. So just scrolling down and going to paragraph 4. So in paragraph 4, you say that in 2004, 2005, you became interested in developing blocks 9 and 29,
Yes.
9 being the south block, 29 the north block.
Yes.
On behalf of one of my clients, you say Leo Kupri.
Yes.
In fact, well, I appreciate that this affidavit was sworn for a particular purpose. Taking from your evidence this morning, your involvement with this piece of land goes back to 2002.
Correct.
Right. And in 2002, you were put in contact with some Chinese investors.
Correct.
And this was a Mr. Shim.
Yes.
And then you traveled to China, was it for the sole purpose of having a meeting about these lands?
Yes.
And you met with a number of investors, including the Marble King.
Yes.
Right. And it's my understanding that you also met the Tin King on this voyage.
Not on that specific trip. That was another trip.
Another trip. But these were obviously men of considerable means.
Oh, yes.
Right, who were, the hope was that they were going to develop a hotel and condo development on these lands, 9
Correct.
and 29?
Yes.
9 and 29 have been described to us as the last best piece of land in downtown Mississauga.
I would have said the same.
And in addition to that, in 2004, you met a group of Korean investors, is that
Yes.
true? And you made a proposal with Mr. Moldenhauer?
Correct.
And that took some time to work its way through, but in the end, that was not successful.
Correct.
So in 2004, 2005, you're continuing what is by now about a 3-year project to try and do something on these lands.
Well, prior to, the time between Mr. Shim and the Koreans, there was nothing being done.
Fair. But this is something that you began in 2002 and you're continuing it in 2004, 2005.
Yes.
And then carrying on to paragraph 5, you say that I knew that the city had developed an overall concept for how it wanted lands in the city center to be developed to make the city center more of a destination location. Nothing secret about that. That was in official documents from the city going back to 1994.
I don't know the dates, but yes.
And this is something you carry on in that paragraph. You say, I believe that incorporating a hotel and convention center into a development design for the lands would be essential in order to get city approval for any development in the lands. Right?
That's what it says.
That's what it says. In fact, that's what you believed.
I believed you needed a hotel beside the Living Arts Center.
Right, because this was an important public project for the city.
Yes.
Right, and it had been identified in that way for some time.
Yes. It was well known.
Now, I take it, following on from that you were aware that this was your mother's goal as well on behalf of the city.
As well.
Right, that this is something that she had campaigned for some time.
Yes, but it wasn't her exclusive idea.
No, I mean the city council had signed on, I gather, back in the 90s.
I don't know when they signed on with it, but
And it's my understanding
everybody.
that you heard her at times give speeches on this issue.
Yes.
And so this was something that wasn't particularly secret. Now, your evidence from this morning was that you have a close family. You speak, as I gather, 5 or 6 times a week to your mother.
yes.
You said that you have to answer the question whether you're working or not at any given time. Sort of a familiar
likes to make-
maternal topic, I guess.
She likes to drive you.
And you, as I understood your evidence, you spoke about what you were up to, what you're working on almost every time you saw
Well,
me.
not specific, but in general.
In general, what are you
Yes.
working on, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so may I assume that when you went to China on this project, that's something that you would have mentioned to her?
Yes.
Right. And when you're in touch with the Korean investors, that's something that you would have mentioned to her?
Probably.